Mulberry harbours were temporary portable harbours developed by the United Kingdom during the Second World War to facilitate the rapid offloading of cargo onto beaches during the Allied invasion of Normandy in June 1944. After the Allies successfully held beachheads following D-Day, two prefabricated harbours were taken in sections across the English Channel from the UK with the invading army and assembled off Omaha Beach, Mulberry A, and Gold Beach, Mulberry B. The Mulberry harbours were to be used until major French ports could be captured and brought back into use after repair of the inevitable sabotage by German defenders. The Mulberry B harbour at Gold Beach was used for 10 months after D-Day, and over 2.5 million men, 500,000 vehicles, and 4 million tons of supplies were landed before it was fully decommissioned. The still only partially completed Mulberry A harbour at Omaha Beach was damaged on 19 June by a violent storm that suddenly arrived from the northeast. After 3 days, the storm finally abated and damage was found to be so severe that the harbour had to be abandoned. Background: the Dieppe raid of 1942 had shown that the Allies could not rely on being able to penetrate the Atlantic Wall to capture a port on the North French coast. The problem was that large ocean-going ships of the type needed to transport heavy and bulky cargoes, and stores needed sufficient depth of water under their keels, together with dockside cranes, to offload their cargo, and this was not available except at the already heavily defended French harbours. Thus, the Mulberries were created to provide the port facilities necessary to offload the thousands of men and vehicles, and tons of supplies necessary to sustain Operation Overlord. The harbours were made up of all the elements one would expect of any harbour: breakwater, piers and roadways. Preparation. With the planning of Operation Overlord at an advanced stage by the summer of 1943, it was accepted that the proposed artificial harbours would need to be prefabricated in the UK and then towed across the English Channel. The need for two separate artificial harbours, one American and one British/Canadian, was agreed at the Quebec Conference in August 1943. An artificial harbours subcommittee was set up under the chairmanship of the civil engineer Colin R. White, brother of Sir Bruce White, to advise on the location of the harbour and the form of the breakwater. The subcommittee's first meeting was held at the Institution of Civil Engineers, ICE, on August 4, 1943. The minutes of the subcommittee's meeting show that initially it was envisaged that bubble breakwaters would be used, then block ships were proposed, and finally, due to an insufficient number of block ships being available, a mix of block ships and purpose-made concrete caisson units. On September 2, 1943, the combined chiefs of staff estimated that the artificial ports, Mulberries, would need to handle 12,000 tons per day, exclusive of motor transport and in all weathers. On 4 September, the go-ahead was given to start work immediately on the harbours. However, infighting between the War Office and the Admiralty over responsibility was only resolved on December 15, 1943 by the intervention of the Vice Chiefs of Staff. The decision was that the Admiralty managed the block ships, bombardments and assembly of all constituent parts on the south coast of England. Further, the Admiralty would undertake all necessary work to survey, sight, tow and mark navigation. The War Office was given the task of constructing the concrete caisson, phoenixes, the roadways, whales and protection via anti-aircraft installations. Once at the site, the Army was responsible for sinking the caisson and assembling all the various other units of the harbours. For the Mulberry A at Omaha Beach, the Naval Corps of Civil Engineers would construct the harbour from the prefabricated parts. The proposed harbours called for many huge caisson of various sorts to build breakwaters and piers and connecting structures to provide the roadways. The caisson were built at a number of locations, mainly existing shipbuilding facilities or large beaches, like Conwy Morfa, around the British coast. The works were let out to commercial construction firms including Waits Construction, Balfour Beatty, Henry Boot, Bovis and Company, Cochrane & Sons, Costain, Cubits, French, Holloway Brothers, John Lang & Son, Peter Lind & Company, Sir Robert McAlpine, Melville Dundas & Whitson, Molam, Nuttall, Parkinson, Halcrow Group, Pauling & Company and Taylor Woodrow. On completion they were towed across the English Channel by tugs to the Normandy coast at only 8.0 km per hour, 4.3 knots, assembled, operated and maintained by the Corps of Royal Engineers, under the guidance of Reginald D. Gwither, who was appointed CBE for his efforts. Various elements of the whale piers were designed and constructed by a group of companies led by Braithwaite & Company, West Bromwich and Newport. Deployment. Wreck pontoon causeway of one of the Mulberry artificial harbours, following the storm of June 22, 1944. On the afternoon of June 6, 1944, D-Day, over 400 towed component parts, weighing approximately 1.5 million tons, set sail to create the two Mulberry harbours. It included all the block ships, code-named corncobs, to create the outer breakwater, gooseberries, and 146 concrete caisson, phoenixes. Arromanches Mulberry. At Arromanches, the first phoenix was sunk at dawn on June 8, 1944. By 15 June a further 115 had been sunk to create a 5-mile-long arc between Tracy-sur-Mer in the west to Asnls in the east. To protect the new anchorage, the superstructures of the block ships, which remained above sea level, and the concrete caisson were festooned with anti-aircraft guns and barrage balloons. Omaha Mulberry. Arriving first on D-Day itself with the bombardments followed a day later by the first block ship. The first Phoenix was sunk on 9 June and the Gooseberry was finished by 11 June. By 18 June 2 piers and 4 pier heads were working. Though this harbor was abandoned in late June, the beach continued to be used for landing vehicles and stores using landing ship tanks, LSTs. Using this method, the Americans were able to unload a higher tonnage of supplies than at Arromanches. Salvageable parts of the artificial port were sent to Arromanches to repair the Mulberry there. Both harbors were almost fully functional when on 19 June a large northeast storm at force 6 to 8 blew into Normandy and devastated the Mulberry harbor at Omaha Beach. The harbors had been designed with summer weather conditions in mind, but this was the worst storm to hit the Normandy coast in 40 years. The destruction at Omaha was so bad that the entire harbor was deemed irreparable. 21 of the 28 Phoenix caisson were completely destroyed, the bombardments were cast adrift, and the roadways and piers smashed. The Mulberry harbor at Arromanches was more protected, and although damaged by the storm it remained usable. It came to be known as Port Winston. While the harbor at Omaha was destroyed sooner than expected, Port Winston saw heavy use for 8 months, despite being designed to last only 3 months. In the 10 months after D-Day, it was used to land over 2.5 million men, 500,000 vehicles, and 4 million tons of supplies, providing much-needed reinforcements in France. In response to this longer-than-planned use, the Phoenix breakwater was reinforced with the addition of specially strengthened caisson. The Royal Engineers had built a complete Mulberry harbor out of 600,000 tons of concrete between 33 jetties, and had 10 miles, 16 kilometers, of floating roadways to land men and vehicles on the beach. Port Winston is commonly upheld as one of the best examples of military engineering. Its remains are still visible today from the beaches at Arromanches. Some troops from the American Ghost Army went to Normandy 2 weeks after D-Day to simulate a Mulberry harbor. The deception was created in such a way that at night its lights drew German gunfire away from the real Mulberries. Post-war analysis. Post-war, particularly American, historians say that although it was a success, the vast resources used on the Mulberry may have been wasted, as the American forces were supplied mostly over the beaches without the use of a Mulberry right through to September 1944. Citation needed. By the end of 6 June, 20,000 troops and 1,700 vehicles had landed on Utah Beach, the shortest beach. At Omaha in Utah, 6,614 tons of cargo was discharged in the first 3 days. A month after D-Day, Omaha and Utah were handling 9,200 tons, and after a further month, they were landing 16,000 tons per day. This increased until 56,200 tons of supplies, 20,000 vehicles, and 180,000 troops were discharged each day at those beaches. The Mulberry harbors provided less than half the total, on good weather days, to begin with. The Normandy beaches supplied the following average daily tonnage of supplies. By the end of June, over 289,827 tons of supplies had been offloaded onto the Normandy beaches. Up to September, U.S. forces were supported largely across the beaches, primarily without the use of the Mulberry. However, in the critical early stage of the operation, had the Allied assault ships been caught in the open without the benefit of any protection, the damage in the American sector especially could have been catastrophic to the lines of supply and communication. Mulberry B was substantially reinforced with units salvaged from the American harbor, and that the Phoenixes were pumped full of sand to give them greater stability, measures that undoubtedly explain the extended service which the British port was able to render. Furthermore, the planners obviously underrated the capacities of open beaches. The tremendous tonnage capacities subsequently developed at both Utah and Omaha were without doubt one of the most significant and gratifying features of the entire Overlord operation.